Hey guys, welcome back to the garage. I actually hurt my finger pretty bad a few days ago working on the Z. I don't want to get too graphic, but it involved a power tool and I had to go to the ER. There's blood all over the garage. Yeah, so I'm gonna go see an orthopedic surgeon soon. But what that means is I probably won't be able to work on the Z for at least a few weeks, if not a month. So to pass the time, I'm just going to be doing a series of talking head videos on things that I always kind of wanted to talk about on the channel. So in this chat, I'm going to address the people out there who are kind of on the fence about owning a Datsun Z or may just be wondering what it's like to work on one. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I think you should choose it for your project car. And in a follow-up video, just to remain kind of objective, I'm also going to be talking about a few reasons why I don't think that you should. The first reason may be the most obvious one. It's considered by most people to be absolutely and just classically gorgeous. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I get that, but if you just look at this thing, I mean, not mine, not in this shape, but if you look at other Zs, this car is pretty objectively beautiful. And if you disagree, you might actually just be wrong. It has a long front nose that is inspired by the European sports cars of the time, and it's just a timeless look. And it doesn't need heavy modifications to look pretty. The car in stock form does it for most people, and I think it pulls off that really tricky combination between femininity and masculinity. But that's not to say that the car doesn't take well to modifications. In fact, you can just add some simple fender flares and a fat set of tires to make it look really, really aggressive. Or you can add headlight covers or JDM style mirrors to customize it. Or, in the extreme end, you can go spend 5 grand on the famous Fugu Z body kit to make it look just absolutely bonkers. I love this car, by the way. The car just has great bone structure, and almost anything that you do to it will make it look even better. And it also helps that it's small enough to fit comfortably even in a single car garage. It's not a big car, which is something that you can't say about most cars from the 70s, even the smaller pony cars. Reason number 2, the first generation Z, and to a certain extent the S130Zs as well, they're historically significant and rare enough to be an appreciating asset while remaining cheap and plentiful enough to be considered a project car by most people. I really think it's currently in that Goldilocks zone between attainable project cars and really expensive collectible cars, and not many cars are in this range. I'm not sure that the Z will be in this range for much longer either. Prices have been appreciating significantly, especially in the last 10 years, but you can still find a Z that is in decent shape for anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000, which does sound pretty expensive, but it is really downright reasonable compared to some of the other collectible cars from the same 70s era that are also appreciating in value. I do expect that prices will continue to increase until it's out of range for most people. So if you want to buy a Z, I would encourage you to buy it sooner rather than later. Now, note that I'm not encouraging you to go flip them or to restore them for a profit. And that's a discussion for another day. But in short, don't do that. It's not advisable. But it is safe to say that as long as you do a quality job restoring or a tasteful job modifying your Z, you will get some of that money back if you ever decide to let it go. And by the way, if you want to keep things original or you care about the resale value, I would go for the 240Z. If you want to just rip it apart and customize it like me and you don't want to feel bad about destroying the originality of the car, do go for the 260Z or the 280Z, and you'll probably save a few bucks initially too, as the 260Zs and the 280Zs don't have as much collectible value. Reason number 3, and this should be a fairly important consideration for most people watching this video. I think what makes Datsun Zs particularly interesting for novice mechanics is that these things are mechanically simple, especially the earlier models, which makes it an ideal candidate for a project car for a novice hobbyist. The straight 6 L series in these S30 and S130Zs, they weren't really known to be horsepower monsters, but they were always known for their durability and simplicity. Now, any engine that is over 40 years old is bound to have some common issues, and For the L series, that was really the head gasket leak. But even then, things are simple enough that you could absolutely fix it yourself, even if you don't have an extensive mechanics background. And the engine doesn't have such tight tolerances that you could even rebuild one in your garage without any fancy tools. And I know a whole bunch of people who have successfully done that. And the engine bay is spacious enough that you can, for the most part, easily access all of the critical components. And it is a breeze to work in, especially compared to more modern car engine bays. Things did get a little bit more complicated with especially the 280Zs, with the introduction of emission controls and the introduction of the first fuel injection system, but that's really not rocket science either. My channel, for instance, has plenty of detailed guides on almost all things L28 engines, so check those out if you want to see what I mean there. Now, for the rest of the car, the independent rear suspension might be the only part of the Z that you could consider to be a bit more complicated compared to especially the domestic cars of the time, but I personally think the benefits outweigh the cons there. All right, reason number 4. For a really old import car, it does have really pretty good aftermarket support, especially if you want to resto mod your Z. For instance, engine swaps in these things are so common that many companies sell kits to make it as easy as possible for a variety of engines of your choosing. I myself have plans for a RB25DET, it's actually sitting right over there, that I'm planning to swap in, but I just bought the engine swap kit, so I don't have to do any difficult fabrication of my own. And you can also rebuild the entire suspension, both front and back, of the car just by using aftermarket parts from companies like Techno Toy Tuning or Apex Engineering. Be careful there though, those parts are super expensive, but they're available. And there's plenty of custom fit body kits, fender flares. Dude, you'll never grow out of this car because there's not a shortage of things in the aftermarket that will tempt you into doing more and more crazy things. Now, notice that I said resto mod, not a faithful restoration. So I will clarify that these don't have as much aftermarket support like the much more popular and common cars like Mustangs or Wranglers of the same era. Especially when it comes to sheet metal or original parts. But the Z community is large enough that many companies are making custom parts for these, and I think they're doing it increasingly so as these become more and more of a favorite in the restoration community. Oh, by the way, if you're looking for Z parts, check out this website that a viewer of the channel made for guys like us. It's called Datsun Part Z or DatsunParts.com, and it's a search and price comparison tool across almost all vendors that carry Z parts. And no, this is not a sponsorship. I actually don't get a penny from you guys using it. I just think it's a very cool site, and I think you'll find it useful when you're trying to work on your Z. And even if you're considering buying a Z, check out this website and you'll be able to see what kind of parts are available in the overall marketplace without having to go junkyard diving or visiting a whole bunch of different sites. And finally, speaking of the community, the Z community being a healthy size is of an enormous benefit to novice mechanics because there's so many people like me that are working on these things and producing content that I think you'll find helpful in your own restoration journey. All right, reason number 5. I just think you'll fall in love with this car. And this sounds like a dumb reason, but hear me out. I think the S30Z is beautiful and famous enough to capture your attention initially, but that's not what makes it special. There's a bunch of cars that will do that. But what you need to experience for yourself, I really think, is how this car feels when you drive it. You need to experience kind of how this light body is pushed by an engine that just loves to scream. I want you to have the conversations that you'll strike up with strangers at a gas station, the friends that you'll make in the supportive and tight-knit Z community, the skills that you are going to learn by patching rust spots that are so common on this car, which we'll get to that in the next video. You'll just get such a sense of accomplishment and pride from building a Z that is truly yours. You can customize it almost in any way that you like, and I think you'll just fall in love with it. I do know that this sounds like a bunch of baloney and it seems purely subjective, but this is the most important criteria of all in choosing a project car. You really need to choose a car that you're going to fall in long-term love with. Believe me, I had truly miserable days working in the garage where I was scared, depressed, anxious, sad, and sometimes even angry. And I don't even want to think about how much money and time I spent working on this, but I'm still here in the garage working on it every chance that I can get, and will probably never stop, even after almost losing a finger. Because I love not only the car, but what it means and represents in my life. And trust me when I say this, this hobby will be incredibly frustrating for you and damaging if you aren't in love with the car. And I think the Z is perfect in all the right ways and imperfect in the ways that I think it will grow on you. All right, that's it for today, and I realize this episode turned into a bit of a personal love letter to the Z. I think the pain medication that I'm on might have something to do with that. But in the next episode, we'll be much more objective and call out some of the reasons why you shouldn't buy one. I just wanted to make this episode first so I don't get flamed for being a hater. I know my subscribers already know that I love the Z, but I just didn't want to put reasons why I don't like the Z out into the world without any context. So that's it. Stay safe. Don't be a dummy like me, and have fun working in the garage. I'll see you guys later.